Welcome in, everybody, to my 10 takeaways from Week 7 of the 2021 CFL season. If you want to support the channel, the best way to do it is by hitting the like button and subscribing to He's Huddle for more CFL content just like this. I greatly appreciate it. And with that said, let's get into this week's takeaways with a really exciting week of action. But let's get into the countdown with number 1. Defense is Hamilton's heart and soul. When people think of the Hamilton Tiger Cats and the success they've had from 2018 to 2019, those two teams, people often are thinking about the offense with Brandon Banks and Jeremiah Mazzoli. And so they think of the offense first and foremost, all those guys. But I think ultimately what drives this team throughout the years and the consistent theme with this franchise is the defense. And you got to look at the leader, Simone Lawrence, in the middle. Very controversial player, as everybody knows. He was known for that hit on Zach Collaros in Week 1 of the 2019 season, and he kind of gained a lot of enemies there, but he's an outstanding football player, and he's really proved this with 2 pick sixes in 2 home games to start out this season. The defense is finally healthy for Hamilton, and this is such a crucial aspect to this team. This offense didn't really do a whole lot with David Watford at the helm in Week 7 against the Stampeders, but they did enough. The defense just needed to make a play, and they did. And this is going to be enough, I think, to win a lot of these games against these Eastern opponents that are, frankly, struggling on offense right now. Really, the only team that really poses a big threat right now on offense is Toronto, and we saw Hamilton come within a missed extra point of taking down or sending the game to overtime against Toronto a couple weeks ago. So we'll see how that goes the rest of the season for Hamilton. I think this defense is really the driving force of this team, and the fact that they're all healthy and we're just awaiting on that offense, those offensive pieces to arrive. I'm thinking, since this is a game against Ottawa on Wednesday, I think that they're probably not going to play those players like Braylon Addison and Devere Posey, and give them those extra week and a half to recover to play against Montreal in Week 9. So I think that's what's going to happen, but this defense, I think, is enough to carry this team and keep this team afloat now that they're healthy this season. Number 2, the Stamps aren't special in any aspect, and it shows. So I think Calgary, the difference between this year, where they've really struggled, and past seasons where this team has been a perennial regular season juggernaut, is the fact that there's just not a lot of strengths on this team. They don't rush the passer well. They've had some moments of rushing the passer well, like against Edmonton in the Labor Day rematch. But on the whole, they just haven't been an impactful pass rush this season. I think the secondary is probably the best position group on this roster. But I think they've also had their moments, like in the Labor Day game against Edmonton, where they really struggled. But I think overall, you look at offense, they've really dropped down in a lot of respects this season. The quarterback play just hasn't been up to snuff. Bo Levi Mitchell, there's just something wrong with him. Obviously, coming off that leg injury, his 2 starts since coming back, he just hasn't looked the same kind of Bo Levi Mitchell that we're used to seeing. I don't know what it is. I think a lot of it is the talent around him. I think this offensive line isn't as good as it was in previous years. I think this receiving core, it has weapons, but I think consistency issues with catching the ball has been a major problem this season. You think of the interception. He threw that interception against Hamilton this week, but that interception was basically a perfectly thrown ball right into the chest of the receiver, bounces off the chest of the receiver into the hands of Simone Lawrence, and see you later. And it was just a really tough game from that respect to watch Calgary's offense. Even though I'm a Hamilton fan, I was at the game. It was really hard to watch this Calgary offense because they just couldn't get into a flow all day. And they're running out of chances now, 2-5 on the season. Honestly, it's going to be really tough for them to crack a top 3 spot in the West this season. And it's going to be very, very interesting to see if they can improve on a lot of these weaknesses that they've shown this season so far. Especially, I think that they just don't show any special qualities really very much on this roster. And I think that's really what's the difference from previous iterations of the team. Number 3. Keon SCHAFFER-BAKER looks like the steal of the 2020 draft. So when I was looking at players for the 2020 CFL draft back at the time, this is when I still had a website instead of a YouTube channel, and I was doing research into a lot of these prospects, and one guy that really did stand out to me in terms of just measurables, productions during college, and all of the total package of it was SCHAFFER-BAKER out of Guelph, who ended up dropping to the 4th round where the Saskatchewan Roughriders took him. And he already looks like one of the most impactful players from that draft. I mean, it's super early, but you just see this guy. He has the toughness to go over the middle to make catches in the CFL. He'll run through arm tackles like we saw in that outstanding touchdown he had. And he's really shown a lot of potential early on this season. And that's really all I have to say about him. I think he's just another potential star receiver that they've uncovered here in the draft the last few years. Look at Braden Lenius, who also looks really good as a Canadian receiver. Once they get Shaq Evans back, this receiving group is going to be very, very good. And I think Saskatchewan, you have a conversation in a few years, I think, when like SCHAFFER-BAKER and Braden Lenius, they start to even get more experience under their belt, that this could be the best unit in the CFL going forward, especially considering that Canadian players generally are more stable in the league and they don't change teams as often. Number 4. Lack of attention to detail doomed the Argos. So I think this is becoming a trend for the Argos, who have really, really played better at home in their couple appearances at home versus how they played on the road so far this season. And I think the big difference is the discipline in those games. You look at the Labor Day classes against Hamilton, they really, really struggle with penalties. Really, really bad undisciplined penalties. They're not just like issues that the other team is forcing. It's just post-whistle stuff that is just killing this team in terms of field position. Also, when you look at the coaching, in this game, there was a 3rd and goal from the 1-yard line, and they line up out of the shotgun. And it's strange, because Calgary did this too against Hamilton, and it drives me nuts, because if you just fall forward, that is basically easy yard like 90% of the time in the CFL. And you have to take advantage of that as an offense, especially when you're down the goal line, down 2 scores, man. And I actually forget what scenario they're in at the time, but I'm pretty sure they were down 2 scores. And those kind of mistakes, along with the penalties, have really hurt the Argos in their 3 losses so far this season. I think this team has yet to play their most complete game, other than the one that they played against Winnipeg, which was the classic rematch and the easier to game plan against a team that you just played the previous week. But I think Toronto has yet to really put it all together for multiple weeks so far this season. And I think they still can. It's just they really need to work on their attention to detail, and that includes the penalties and these really baffling coaching decisions. Number 5. BC is one of the league's best teams on both sides of the ball. So this is honestly one of the biggest shocks for me so far this season, and this is the team I was easily the most wrong about. They've already almost hit my predicted win total for them this season, and I think I only had them winning 5 games in my official CFL prediction. I thought this team was going to struggle on both sides of the ball in the trenches, and I thought that was going to really doom this team, but they've really found a way to kind of battle and improve those areas of this team, especially this defensive line that is really playing above expectations so far this season, considering that it's basically all rookies, and then J.R. Tavai, the one really hard-working defensive end, who I did like going into the season, but I didn't think was going to be a number 1 pass rusher kind of guy. But they really found that number 1 pass rusher guy in Aboom Gwacham, who's been one of the best CFL rookies so far this season. And then when you think about this team, Mike Reilly playing at a really high level, which I'll talk about in a sec. And then you got, obviously, all these playmakers on offense. Lucky Whitehead emerging as a star. Bo Lacumbo in the linebacking core, playing his best football at the CFL level at linebacker. And then the defensive back room just looks like easily the best unit in the league. They've only allowed something like crazy, like 3 touchdowns over the past, 4 games or something like that. It was a ridiculous stat that I saw the other day with that. And it's really a testament to how well this BC team is playing on both sides of the ball. Yes, I know 2 of their wins against Ottawa, but they went to Montreal and they really proved it. That's a place that they've really struggled over the years to win in, and they went in there and walked out with a pretty easy victory because this defense was just so solid, did not allow any touchdowns, and it's just a really impressive start to the season for the BC Lions. I'm really excited to see if they can keep it going. If they can beat Saskatchewan on Friday, going to be a very interesting rematch, because that game was quite a thriller if people remember back to week 1. Number 6. Michael Reilly is quietly having a fantastic season. So Mike Reilly, in his first season with the BC Lions in 2019, he was a disappointment, right? And I think a lot of that is due to the offensive line. He didn't seem all too healthy throughout that season, and he never really got back to that level that he was with Edmonton in 2018 and prior. But this season, he just looks like a man reborn, even though he started off the season with that wonky elbow issue, and we saw the passes week 1 against Saskatchewan. But in the ensuing weeks, we've just started to see more and more confidence build in his arm. He's starting to throw the ball a lot more down the field. He's more comfortable moving around within the pocket. And there's not many players in the league that I've seen at the quarterback position in the CFL that can move around the pocket as well as Michael Reilly does, just from a mobility standpoint. He's not a guy that takes off and runs all that often, but in terms of mobility and extending the play, this is just an outstanding player. And he sees the field really well. He's just playing at a really, really high level so far this season. And you start to see that prototypical ideal CFL quarterback start to play out, like a lot of people say. A lot of people thought, going into the season, this guy, and they've said this for a few years, it's like that if you're going to build a prototypical CFL quarterback, Michael Reilly has all the tools. And he's really showing that, and he's quite honestly right up there in the MOP conversation with Zach Collaros so far this season. Going to be really interesting to follow that award race the rest of the season. But Michael Reilly, man, he's really impressed me so far this season. Number 7, Montreal is a boom or bust team. So Montreal loses to BC on Saturday, and I thought this game could have gone either way. And in hindsight, if they score a couple touchdowns, this game would have went either way. But this offense is very feast or famine. I don't trust this defense really at all. I think there are pieces there, but they're just not up to speed, and they haven't improved this unit enough over a really poor defensive unit from 2019. So this team is ultimately going to rely on their offense, and they have so far this season in the first half. But the problem is this offense is just too sporadic in terms of producing consistent offense. I've talked about before that their intermediate passing game is very poor in terms of the CFL level. I was looking at some team stats today, and it's just absurd how low the completion percentage is below the 8th team in the CFL. It's really ridiculous how poorly this team is executed in terms of connecting those easy, short passes. They're making them look hard. There's just no sustained offense with this group. And the problem is that they're really, really dependent on that big play. They're just so dependent on that. Their depth of target is so much higher than other teams in the league, and they rely on that big play a lot. And when that running game is not going, which it actually was in this one, William Stanback had another really good game. But when that running game gets shut down, this offense really, really struggles. And even so, I think it's obvious that those red zone issues were just a big problem this week against BC. And this offense is just not consistent enough on a weekly basis for me to trust them to go on a run here the rest of the season. I think, we'll see weeks where they explode. Like they had a game against Edmonton, their first game of the season. They played great on offense and things click. That's when the deep ball passing comes into a play. But they don't have that second gear on offense to have those variety of pass patterns that they can complete and consistently pick up yards and move the chain. There's a lot of inconsistencies in this passing game. And like I said, I just don't trust this team going forward. They're just a boom or bust every week, and you just never know what you're going to get out of the Montreal Alouettes in 2021. Number 8, Adam Bighill is set on another most outstanding defensive player campaign. What can you say about Adam Bighill? He's really been an outstanding player in this league for many, many years now, and it's really getting to a point where you got to say he's one of the best linebackers that's ever played in this league. He's really just a special player, especially after the 2019 season where it looked like he was kind of falling off a bit. He, struggled with injuries a bit. But going into the season, I had actually predicted him to win the most outstanding player, defensive player of the year award. He's one of the best coverage linebackers in the league. He just gets really, really good depth in his drops and covers just a lot of space. He's super rangy. He is just a dominant force against the run and as a blitzer. Just a really versatile player, and he has the production to back it up so far this season, and he looks right in the thick of things for the Defensive Player of the Year race in the CFL. and I'm really excited to see if he can add another award to his trophy case. Number 9. The Elks showed some fight. So obviously the Elks lost to Winnipeg Saturday night, and as a lot of people expected, almost everybody was taking Winnipeg, especially after the injury to Trevor Harris. But I'm going to go positive with this, because I think that, obviously Taylor Cornelius, making his first CFL start, former Tampa Bay Viper, really, really struggled at points in this game. But he also showed a lot of flashes in terms of, arm strength. I navigated the pocket pretty well. I moved around pretty well, better than I expected. I thought this guy was a statue when playing in the XFL. So there were some bright signs there, and this team really didn't give up throughout this entire game. They were matching Winnipeg's physicality a lot of the time in the second half and in the second quarter of games. Really what just screwed them was the turnovers, and obviously the pick six, and then the fumble in the end zone that leads to the touchdown. So that's really the difference in this game. But you take those out, and you clean up some of the turnover stuff, and you got a pretty good team going forward, I think, with Edmonton. They have some things to, tweak. I just don't know if there's going to be enough here to go on a playoff run, string multiple victories together, especially if Trevor Harris is out for multiple weeks here. I think Cornelius could potentially steal them a game here or there, but I think ultimately I don't think I can see him doing it for multiple weeks at a time, which I think this team is probably going to need to sneak into the playoffs this season, just the way that the standings are starting to shake out. Especially now, we're going to start to see a lot more head-to-head with these Western teams. They still got to play Winnipeg twice in the next 3 weeks, so it's going to be a tough road for Edmonton, but I thought they really showed a lot of fight on both sides of the ball, getting back into this game. They could have just mailed it in, and I was pretty impressed in that regard with them this week. Number 10. Kickers have really struggled this season. So I didn't really know how to label this point, because there are some teams in the league that their kicking situation has been pretty good this season. So like Calgary, Rene Paredes basically been himself, besides that missed field goal against Winnipeg. But I think ultimately, when the majority of the league has questions about their place kicking situation, it's becoming quite an issue. And this could really cloud over this season in terms of playing a major factor come playoff time. We saw this week 1, all the way back in week 1 when Saskatchewan played BC, and the kicker that they had, the global kicker that they had for BC, he misses multiple kicks in that game, and ultimately was the difference in the scoreboard after BC made a huge comeback in that game. Especially in this league right now that we're seeing the scoring be down across the league. Field goals mean that much more in these close games. We're seeing the margin of victory be very slim in the CFL this season, and kicking has just become a major issue. Look at a team like Winnipeg. I mean, obviously they're 6-1, but do they feel good about their kicking situation today? Absolutely not. That was just a horrible performance against Edmonton from their kicker. I forget what the guy's name is already, but he was 0 of 3 on field goals. He hit all the extra points he had, but at the same time, this is right after they just had Mark Leggio and moved him out of that place kicking spot because he was really struggling. Overall in the season, Winnipeg's kickers are 50%, I believe I saw. And then it's not just them either. You look at Hamilton. Hamilton finally had a good week from their place kicking, 5 of 5 on field goals, and that was really the difference in them beating Calgary this week. But in previous weeks, obviously they've been shuffling kickers like crazy. So I think this is becoming a major issue this season, and it's starting to play a much bigger role as the playoffs and the standings come more into focus here, when we might see a team lose a game due to a missed kick here or there, or the margin of victory is so small that is the difference in the game. And we're going to have to watch and see how these teams address these going forward, because these are big questions, especially in the CFL when low scoring has been such a factor in these early season games. But with that said, that is going to be the end of today's video, ladies and gentlemen, and I want to thank each and every one of you for watching. Once again, my name is Jason. If you want to support the show, the best way to do it is by hitting the like button and subscribing to Hussey's Huddle for more CFL content just like this. It's a weird week this week with, the game on Wednesday, so we're actually going to do game picks coming up on Tuesday night or Wednesday morning at the latest, and then I will publish a power rankings video a little bit later on in the week, and then if I have time, I'm actually planning another fun video, one of those one of every team kind of videos, so look out for that. But with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.